January 10th, 2022 of the Sacramento Regional Transit Board of Directors to order. Welcome, everyone. And now this is a virtual meeting, and all speakers, the board and staff, if you could please announce your name when you begin to speak. This meeting is being live streamed, and the slide on the screen shows the information on how to join our webinar via Zoom. You can also call into the meeting at 253-215-8782, and the webinar access code is 825-2220-1991. If you are participating by phone, please push *9 to indicate a desire to comment. If you're joining us online through Zoom, please push the raise hand button. And be sure to unmute yourself when it is your turn to speak. And please voluntarily state your name for the record. And with that, Tabitha, would you call the roll?
Yes, Director Budge. And Director Harris.
Here.
Director Hell.
Here.
Director Hume.
Here.
Director Jennings. I see him on here. Let's see. Director Jennings.
Here.
Director Kennedy.
Here.
Director Natoli. Hang on, I think he might have his. Oh, this is Linda Budge. Okay. Director, I'm going to go back to Director Natoli. Director Chenier.
Here.
Director Cerna.
Here.
Director Valenzuela.
Here.
Director Budge.
Here.
And Chair Miller.
Here.
All right, with that, we have a quorum at 10 votes. And this meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast on Metro 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse. Today's meeting will air on Wednesday, January 12th at 9 a.m. and Tuesday, January 18th at 9 a.m. on Channel 14 and webcast at metro14live.saccounty.net and is closed captioned. This meeting can also be viewed at youtube.com/MetroCable14.
Thank you, Tabitha. And with that, would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And with that, let's call the first item.
The first item is the consent calendar items 2.1 to 2.2.
Any director questions or items you want to pull? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Chair, I have a comment.
Sure.
Yeah, this is Jeff Harris. Hey, I'd just like to say that I worked with Four Leaf on the McKinley Water Vault, and I found them to be really remarkable in terms of how they worked on helping to manage the project. So I feel very confident that they'll help us with this project. Just wanted to put in the good word for Four Leaf.
Yeah, we have them on some of our city projects, and we're very pleased with their performance. Any public comment, Tabitha?
I have a question. What is the estimated construction cost on that project?
Hold on, we'll get an answer for you.
Laura Ham, are you available to answer that question?
Yes, if you can give me just one moment, I'll pull that information for you.
Can we also ask what the start date for the construction might be?
It's a fair question.
I'm sorry, it may be in the staff report.
Don Natoli's here, by the way. Thanks.
Am I correct? It's a not to exceed 2.3 million? Yeah.
I apologize. It just took me just a moment to get to my notes. There's 3 elements to the project. The second sidetrack is estimated at 35.2 million, and the low floor station conversion is at 73.9 million. Again, those are estimates. We have not put those out to bid yet. We're estimating start date of March.
Thank you, Laura. Tabitha, is there any public comment?
There's no email public comment, so now we'll take public comment on the consent calendar. Please push *9 if participating by phone, or raise your hand if you're participating through Zoom, and voluntarily state your name for the record. And I do, oh, Jeff Tartaglia has his hand up.
Mr. Tartaglia, welcome.
Well, I guess you can now hear me. It's a little difficult to see when we are muted and not muted, but appreciate the fact of asking when. And I believe she said there was 3 components to that project. I've heard 2 of them disclosed. Haven't heard the 3rd one disclosed. Just wondering what in that is in regard to. Is the question on dealing with the consent docket and dealing with the project at hand. That's my question.
Laura, do you have that
Laura, would you like me to
information?
answer that? Yeah, so the 3rd element is the purchase of replacement LRVs. So the first phase of that is 19 million.
Got it. Thank you. And with that, I'd entertain a motion, please.
I'll move consent.
Second,
Motion by Director Harris. Who was the second?
Budge.
Thank you, Linda. Second by Director Budge. Oh, shoot, I can't do all those in favor, can I? We need to call the roll, please.
Director Budge,
Yes.
Director Harris,
Aye.
Director Howell,
Yes.
Director Hume,
Aye.
Director Jennings,
Yes.
Director Kennedy,
Aye.
Director Natoli,
Aye.
Director Chenier,
Aye.
Director Cerna,
Aye.
Director Valenzuela. Yes. And Chair Miller.
Aye.
The consent calendar passes with 11 votes.
Thank you, Tabitha. Please call item 6.
Item 6, public addresses the board on matters not on the agenda. I do have 2 email comments, and I have a response from staff, if you would like me to read those now.
Yes, please.
All right, so this is from Betty Matsui, President Seroptimus International of Elk Grove, and Linda Lucina, Stop Trafficking Coordinator, Sierra Nevada Region. Dear Henry Lee, General Manager, CEO, and Board, January being the National Human Trafficking Awareness Month, we would like to congratulate you and your training department on continuing best practices by providing all new operators training on the signs of human trafficking, providing training to all current operators through annual CDL training, and placing stickers with the National Human Trafficking Hotline on all buses. We would also like to thank Deborah Salinas, VP of Communications and Partnerships, along with her staff, for coordinating with the placement of posters and interior car cards on all buses, and for January Next Stop News, Help End Human Trafficking. SIEG has, for the last few years, placed posters on the E-Tran buses, and with Elk Grove returning to SAC-RT, we thought what a better way to go, regional with the message. SAC-RT has so many eyes and ears on our youth in the region. We hope that the operators will, with their training, stickers, and posters, will stay vigilant and assist our youth and those in need whenever possible. A special thank you to Elk Grove City Council Member Pat Hume for the assistance of EGPD Sergeant Jason Jimenez and the EG Auto Mall by placing the sign on the Highway 99 Auto Mall electronic billboard for the month of January. Seroptimist is a global volunteer organization that provides women and girls with access to the education and training they need to achieve economic empowerment. We hope to educate women and girls of the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Thank you for providing the region with an award-winning transit system. Sincerely, Betty and Linda. And then staff, Lisa Hines, has provided the following comment. We at SAC-RT have a long history working with local and regional law enforcement to assist in identifying, reporting, and combating human trafficking. The safety and security of our ridership is a major concern at SAC-RT. We are proud to continue to educate our employees to report human trafficking cases. As a regional agency, SAC-RT remains poised to stand up against human trafficking in Sacramento, Elk Grove, Rancho Cordova, Citrus Heights, and Folsom. We at SAC-RT will remain vigilant in the pursuit of justice for the victims of human trafficking throughout education and enforcement. And then I have public comment from Barbara Stanton, ridership for the masses. Happy New Year, Chair Miller and directors. We understand that SAC-RT has to cancel trips on specific bus routes because of staffing issues from time to time. However, we would like to remind staff and the board that not everyone has a computer or smartphone to get those announcements, as was the case of 2 days in December when a rider stood at a bus stop and no bus showed up. She had to call RT to find out that they not only had canceled 15 trips on that route, the bus she was going to transfer to had the last 4 trips of the day canceled. She did not go out for 2 days because of the situation. SAC-RT used to put sandwich boards on informing riders of the situation in the past. We ask that SAC-RT continue that practice or announce a PSA when the problem arises, because we remind you again that not everyone has a computer or smartphone. And she said, thank you. And staff has responded to Barbara Stanton.
Thank you. Any other written comments?
There's no other written comments, but it looks like there's 3 hands up.
Let's go to the hands up, please.
Okay, we have Jeff Tartaglia.
Good evening, board. Jeff Tartaglia wants to report 3 things. 1, your electronic bulletin boards seem to be extremely inactive in most locations. And because of the light rail stations, you've elected to put advertisement up. Many of the bus or the light rail locations no longer give you a clue as when a train is arriving. You have 2 weekends in January where you apparently are going to be running a bus bridge on the blue line, and appears to be somewhere downtown to taking you stopwise and everything else to up to Marconi. On that, is there indeed, because the last time you did this at 29th Street, you had no sandwich boards to say where you pick up and where you get off for the bus shelters or bus bridges. I would encourage, please make sure that those are there for that, so the riders know what to do, not just electronically. And electronically, it still doesn't clue me into whether I would get it at 9th Street or 10th Street, picking up and dropping off for the bus, shall we say, bridge situation. Also, I have experienced on both the 81 and on the 51 a large number of students. I would encourage, because you have at least 1 or 2 reports of dealing with those students not being in great control. They treat it as a school bus rather than public transportation. The last one was this last week. It was on a 51, and the group all behind me were extremely loud and noisy, and inadvertently or deliberately, they took off the round mirror that let the driver know what is the status of the back, should we say, bridge in there. I just bring that to you and suggest that you alternately look at bringing some form of from 3 to 5 control in there, of bringing in a transit administrator, advisor, whatever you want to call them in there, so that you observe, and it's not being a operator's responsibility when you have a group of 10 or 15, and maybe you need to direct a different type of response, i.e. having drivers alert when there's more than 20 students aboard public transportation if there are issues. I bring those to your attention, and I am going to listen to you on the YouTube tomorrow, because I'm going over to YOLO to hear what's going on with the I-80 situation, dealing with YOLO's public transportation system. That's my heads up to you people. And please, when you do all these oral reports, I hope you put something in the minutes explaining what was the utmost moments and everything else. I observe in other writers, but my time is up. That when YouTube is.
Thank you for your observations, Mr. Tartaglia. And with that, next speaker, please.
Michael Harris.
Welcome, Mr. Harris.
Oh, it looks like he's using an older version of Zoom. Oh, I'll promote him to panelist to allow him to speak. Jeff, are you able to speak?
Or Michael.
Michael.
Yeah, I got, I guess I'm getting old because I got old computers and got gray hairs, and yeah, I got old stuff. Well, again, Chair Miller, it's good to see you, and directors. It's that time of the year again. Happy New Year, and we're getting ready for just an amazing 2022. This. I'll just say it's a lot of good things are finally coming to fruition. It's really quite amazing. So this year is the 22nd anniversary of Rosa Parks Day in California, and y'all all should take a bow because you've had to put up with me for over the years. But my mothers, my grandmothers, as far as we can go back on my mother's side of the family, they're from that bloodstained soil of Alabama, and the task of carrying the torch for Rosa Parks these last 22 years, they couldn't have picked a better person because the blessings, in that labor of love, it just continued to unfold. For example, I was talking with the lawyer for Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, Fred Gray. He's 91 years old, and I don't even know how to open my mouth and complain about something. Talking with him. But the idea that this February 4th, talking with Joe Noble once again, and even though we have COVID challenges, we're going to display the bus. And hopefully, I doubt we'll get clearance to have people on the bus this year in front of the state capitol, and really push the agenda, because across the nation, people want to have Rosa Parks Day observed, and I don't know why they want to do it on my birthday, which is December 1st, but her birthday is February 4th, and again, RT should take a bow, because again, this is the first official place where Rosa Parks Day was celebrated. Was here in Sacramento on her birthday, bipartisan support back in 2000, when she was still living, and folks were like, "Why are you doing this now?" I'm like, "Well, it's not me." She did her summers here her winters in LA, and the folks in LA pushed the button, and they went home for the weekend, and we carried the torch, and still are. So I want to just thank you all for acknowledging the patron saint of the Montgomery Women's Political Council, and this year we're really lifting up the concept of womanity. So thank you all for all you've done, and will continue to do.
Thank you, Mr. Harris, for your great comments. We appreciate it. Next speaker, please.
We have Barbara Stanton.
Hi, Miss Stanton.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, good. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you, Deborah, for your response on my comments. Hopefully, I do have some more questions and we can get together by Zoom one of these days. I just wanted to let you know that the Top Banana Award is coming up again, and we have posted the particulars on our website. It is open to any individual organization or elected official who has, better transit in Sacramento. So if you could send us a 300-word document stating why this person should get the Top Banana Award, it would be much appreciated. And we plan on having the presentation on a Zoom meeting sometime in March. So if you know anybody, get your nominations in by the middle of February. And maybe it could be one of you all. So hopefully. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. And good to see you all. Good to see you all. And hopefully 2022 will be a better year for all of us. And we hope that you all have a very healthy new year. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind words, Ms. Stanton. Any other hands raised, Tabitha?
I don't see any other hand. Oh, hang on. One just popped up. Oh, that's Barbara Stanton, so I don't think I lowered it.
Oh, no. Lowered. Yeah. Okay.
Well, if there's no other hands up, let's move on to the next item, please.
Next, we have new business, item 7.1, motion item, extending the term of the current chair, Steve Miller, and the vice chair, Patrick Kennedy, for one more year as chair and vice chair for the Sacramento Regional Transit Board of Directors for 2022. This item will be presented by myself. On December 13th, 2021, the SAC-RT Board of Directors adopted an intent motion to extend the current terms of Steve Miller as chair and Patrick Kennedy as vice chair of the SAC-RT Board of Directors for calendar year 2022. And at this time, the board is being asked to formally nominate and elect the chair and vice chair of the SAC-RT Board of Directors for 2022.
So Chenier would like to move the item.
Second?
Second.
Chenier moved the item, second by Harris.
Yeah.
Before we take up the item, is there any questions from directors? I don't see any hands up. Is there any public comment, Tabitha?
Don't see any hands raised.
Very good. And with that, please call the roll call, please.
Director Budge,
Yes.
Director Harris,
Aye.
Director Howe,
Yes.
Director Hume,
Aye.
Director Jennings,
Yes.
Director Kennedy,
Aye.
Director Natoli,
Aye.
Director Chenier,
Aye.
Director Cerna,
Aye.
Director Valenzuela,
Yes.
and Chair Miller.
Aye.
Motion passes with 11 votes.
Okay, on to the next item, please.
The next item under new business is 7.2, SAC-RT Board and Commission appointments, and 7.2A is motion appointing one board member and one alternate board member to the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority. This item will also be presented by myself. The current members of this board are Chair Miller and Director Howell, and the alternates are Directors Kennedy and Harris. At this time, due to anticipated schedule conflicts, staff is requesting that the board select to have Director Harris become a member and Director Howell be appointed as an alternate to sit on the CCJPA.
And I completely concur with that. My schedule has not allowed me to be available very frequently.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Any other director questions? Do we have any public comment on this?
I don't see any hands.
Perfect, then I'd certainly entertain a motion, please.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
I get the first, Director Kennedy or Vice Chair Kennedy. Who is the second?
Me, Carrie.
Okay. Director Howell is the second. Please call the roll.
Director Budge,
Yes.
Director Harris,
Aye.
Director Howell,
Yes.
Director Hume,
Aye.
Director Jennings,
Yes.
Director Kennedy,
Aye.
Director Natoli,
Aye.
Director Chenier,
Aye.
Director Cerna,
Aye.
Director Valenzuela,
Yes.
and Chair Miller.
Aye,
Motion passes with 11 votes.
thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is 7.2B, Chair appointment, appointing one board or management staff member to the retirement boards, ATU, IBEW, OE3, MCEG, and AFSCME. At this time, the board chair needs to appoint one management member to each of the retirement boards to fill the expired term of the Vice Chair Kennedy. The SACRT board chair may appoint the same member to each retirement board. A management member is defined as a board member or a member of SACRT's management staff.
Well, anybody interested in serving?
Mr. Chair, I will agree if it's okay to continue to serve.
Oh, yeah. If you don't mind, would you like to consider an alternate? I was thinking of Shelley Valentine, just in case she can't make it.
Whatever you think, sir.
Well, thank you, Patrick.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any questions or public comment before we take the vote? Oh, there's no vote needed on this one, I don't think.
Yeah,
No.
no vote.
Okay,
And no
So
public comment.
it is done. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for taking that on. And with that, on to the general manager's report, please.
We actually have 7.2C.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, yeah, I missed that totally on my agenda, sorry.
So we have 7.2C, chair appointment, form an ad hoc committee to discuss voting structure and board composition. An information item was on, an information item on board composition and voting structure was presented to the SACRT Board of Directors on December 13th, 2021. At that meeting, the board discussed forming an ad hoc committee, and the chair asked staff to bring back an action item to form an ad hoc subcommittee and appoint members to the committee, which is similar to what the board did in 2005, to discuss possible changes to SACRT's Enabling Act to recommend to the full board a change to the board composition.
I'll volunteer to serve on that because I don't think it's going to affect Folsom status, and I think many of the rest of you, with the possible exception of Linda, maybe even you, Steve, are likely to be affected by it. So I think it'd be helpful to have somebody that's going to be perhaps impartial.
That's what I was thinking.
And I would also volunteer.
Okay, I've got two so far. Tabitha, what was the makeup of our 2005 committee?
Olga, do you have that answer?
Yeah. So the makeup of the committee last time was one county member, one city of Sacramento member, and then one member from each of the other jurisdictions. So every jurisdiction had a seat on the ad hoc.
That's logical.
That makes sense. Do I have any volunteers from either the city or the county?
I'll volunteer for the city unless one of my colleagues wants it.
Okay, well, pencil you
Chair,
in.
this is Director Cerna.
Yes, hi, Phil.
Mr. Chair, this is Director Cerna. Yeah, I'd like to, if he's willing to serve, I'd like to nominate Director Natoli, who has considerable, I'm going to say this as nicely as possible, Don, considerably more history than most on this board, and probably can take that and have it be utilized in the context of this particular charge for this committee.
So
I
for
can second
the
that.
record, I'd like it to state that Director Cerna called Director Natoli old.
No.
If he did, it's on the record.
I think he said experienced.
He's also
Don,
I meant wise.
Thank you.
Don, is that something you'd be willing to do?
Yeah, you may be happy to. Thank you to my colleagues and to all. Yeah, I can look forward to it. That's fine.
And I'm guessing Director Hume has no interest in this process.
I stopped paying attention once I heard the makeup would be one individual from each other jurisdiction. So,
Well, I take it you want to be on there? Okay.
yeah, I mean, I assume if we're going to do it the same way, the rest of us would all be on it. And then,
Yeah.
That's
I was
Patrick's
trying to avoid it, but
basically.
I think as chair, I have to do it as well. So
Yeah.
I put my name down. Who am I missing? I got Hal Butch, Valenzuela, Natoli, Hume, and Miller. Does that cover all the jurisdictions?
It does.
Okay, we'll schedule up some times and put this ad hoc committee together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would be a quorum, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we have to publicly notice the meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get the details worked out and get an invite out to everybody. And there is no vote needed on this one as well. Okay, thank you, everyone. That was quick and easy. Now I think we're ready to move on to the general manager's report.
Good evening, Chair Miner, members of the board and the public. Welcome to the first board meeting of 2022 and Happy New Year to all. I would like to begin my remarks with field updates. Then Chris, Lisa, or Brent will give an update on safe parking project on Roseville Light Rail Station and also update on Mayor Stanton's request to add more spaces on the Roseville Station and at Franklin Station as a second pilot. Then Laura and Brent will present a comprehensive update on our Sacramento Go ADA Paratransit service and performance. As we begin the new year 2022, the region is experiencing a surge, as you know, in COVID-19 cases. We saw last week that the Sacramento County Public Health Department issued an order encouraging all meetings be conducted remotely when they can. As we have shared, the recent COVID surge and the national workforce shortage is having a tremendous impact on transit industry, including Sacramento operations and staffing. Actually, lots of transit agencies have already reduced the service level by 10 to 30%. And we try not to reduce our service, but as a result, we have seen an increase in trip cancellations and service delays. We recognize the impact that just one cancellation will have on Sacramento's customers. Please know that we are actively working to maintain all services every day within available resources and continue to aggressively recruit for additional staff. In December, we hosted 2 successful hiring events that attracted over a couple hundreds of potential candidates. During these job fairs, we received over 280 applicants for various open positions, primarily driver's positions, because of aggressive marketing and media attention, including TV's interviews and news segments. To date, we have about 70 applicants from the job fairs who are either in the process of being hired or are going through the screening and interview process, which accounts for over 6% of our entire workforce. Then next item, I would also like to share some information on 2 upcoming events in January. First, Sacramento's historical 1958 Old Blue Bus will be participating in the Martin Luther King Celebration Vehicle Caravan on Monday, January 17th, hosted by the NAACP. The route is the same as last year, departing from Grant High School at 9 a.m., making its way to Sacramento State. This will be a safe way to continue to honor the legacy of the great Dr. King. I believe people can actually ride on the bus. And then later this month, Sacramento, in partnership with Asian Resources, Inc. and the Vietnamese American Community of Sacramento, will host the 2022 Sacramento TED Festival in the parking lot of our Florence Light Rail Station. You may recall that a couple of years ago, the Urban Land Institute did an extensive study of the Florence Station and recommended activating the site with community events just like this one. The festival is a cultural tradition on the Lunar New Year, and the event will be held on Saturday, January 29th and Sunday, January 30th. We're expecting over about 10,000 people to attend this free community festival, which promotes the Vietnamese culture and helps to build a stronger and diverse community. With the event at the Floating Light Rail Station, SACAT is proud to provide free rides that will drop off attendees at the event doorstep. Then I also like to provide an update on the improvement to our WhatIat light rail and bus transfer station. As some questions were asked in the last board meetings, and we regularly receive inquiries from our customers about this station, because this station is really our flagship station and collecting northeast region of this mega region. The installation of the new west side elevator is scheduled for this week, followed by the station inspection. As you recall, our new east side elevator was installed a couple months ago. SACAT's IT department will be installing the camera in the west elevator, and our facility department will be making additional improvements on site. Passengers should note that a special shuttle bus is required and provides to access the WhatIat library station from Watt Avenue, as contractors will need to close the station elevator and the stairs to complete these changes. We anticipate an early completion date of February 28th, and I will provide an update for the next board meeting on February 14th. Finally, included in your board package are detailed reports from 3 compliance-oriented areas with a dot line reporting structure to the board, our general counsel, into the auditor, and the EO officer. In the interest of time, we will not be providing a oral report for each of these areas, but staff are in attendance if you have any specific questions for them. And if 3 of you, Olga, Corey, and Greg, if you want to, emphasize some major points, you're welcome to do so. I'd like to acknowledge the outstanding work of these 3 individual leaders. Our General Counsel, Olga Sanchez-Wacha, and her strong legal team, Corey Carter, our internal auditor, and Greg Waters, our EO officer. They are highly diligent and vigilant in ensuring our compliance with laws and regulations, and have been critical and integral part of this highly performing organization as the best transit system in North America in 2021. The teamwork of these 3 compliance-oriented areas with agency-wide staff have been highly effective and efficient, thus greatly advancing SACAT's strategic goals and board priorities. With that, I would now like to turn it over to Chris, Lisa, Laura, and Brent.
Yeah, thank you, Henry. As you mentioned, we promised to keep the board updated on the progress being made on the safe parking program at the Roseville Road Light Rail Station. And as you know, that property is owned by Caltrans, and SACRT operates on the site via an encroachment permit. The board has delegated the SACRT GM the authority to negotiate a 3-party lease agreement that will allow for safe parking operations on site. Just before the new year, Caltrans sent back a second draft of the lease agreement between the city, SACRT, and Caltrans. Currently, the city and SACRT are reviewing the document and submitting comments with the hopes of scheduling a meeting to finalize later this month. As part of the lease agreement, Caltrans requires the city to perform an environmental site assessment before a shelter can begin operation, which could take a few months to complete. With the lease agreement, when the lease agreement is finalized, Caltrans will seek Federal Highway Administration approval, and SAC-RT will seek Federal Transit Administration approval. At the end of December, SAC-RT met with Mayor Steinberg and council members Lowly Engineer to update the city on the timeline for implementation of the Roseville Road Safe Parking Program. Understanding the complexities may delay the launch of Roseville Road, the mayor requested two things. The SAC-RT board provide approvals to move forward with a second pilot at the Franklin Light Rail Station. And second, the board explore additional spaces for the program at Roseville Road, which could further delay the launch of that program. The board had previously expressed the desire to launch one program at a time, but with delays impacting Roseville site, staff would appreciate the board's feedback on the mayor's request. Before we conclude the update, I would like to introduce SAC-RT's VP of Security, Safety, and Customer Satisfaction, Lisa Hines, to provide information regarding the encampments in the surrounding area.
Thank you, Chris. Chair Miller, members of the board. As we've shared with the board before, a few months back, there was a fire under the Grand Avenue Bridge that caused multiple cars to burn and scalded the underbelly of that bridge. In late December, Caltrans was finally able to assess the site and assess the damage to the bridge. Thankfully, the fire did not cause significant damage, but it underscores a potential risk to our operations. A similar encampment currently resides under the Grand Avenue Light Rail Bridge with our track on top. Should a similar accident occur, SAC-RT light rail operations would have to be halted. Due to the importance of this critical infrastructure, SAC-RT intends to work with Caltrans and the city to find a solution that won't jeopardize our railroad tracks. And with that concludes our presentations for Chris and I, if there's any questions.
Yes, please. Any questions or comments from directors?
Yeah, I have some comments. Chair Miller.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much. I guess on the one hand, just from looking at the two pictures, Lisa, and thank you for bringing that information. These were two encampments that you're talking about that had no supervision, no fencing, no connection to services. They were strictly encampments. So a little bit of a different situation. I think what we're trying to do is bring people into a much safer zone and hook them up with encampments, which overall should make the area safer. So I want to really put an exclamation mark on that. And you know, I think Katie can certainly address some of the work that she's done for me at the X Street shelter. The area around that is safer because of the shelter itself and the work that we're doing there, the fact that there are people there 24/7. COVID has again hurt this, but our downtown streets team has been out there picking up literally hundreds and hundreds of pounds of garbage, needles and things like that. So really trying to keep the area much cleaner. So I think what this has resulted in is an improvement in the area. Not to say there aren't challenges with encampments that might reside outside of exactly what we're doing. We do think this is a crisis. I've had conversation with the council member who represents Franklin, which is used to be Rick Jennings, and it's now Mike Bang as a result of redistricting. I think moving ahead at a deliberate speed with Franklin because of the time frame. My understanding is Roseville Road could take up to a year to get all the approvals that we need, and frankly, we just can't wait. Franklin is under the supervision of RT. It could be a lot quicker. It would give us the data that we need in a pilot program, and so I really would hope that we can provide direction as a board tonight. And I certainly would move that if we can use it as a motion that we start working on Franklin with the speed to open it up. Keep that data reporting back to the board. It will certainly be done and operational before Roseville Road. I don't see any way that it doesn't happen in that sequence. And we can use what we learn at Franklin in Roseville as we continue to move forward.
Thank you,
I have a
Director
question.
Scheer. Hold on a second. Vice Chair Kennedy has his hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to support what Director Chenier said, you know, Franklin is in my district, the district that I represent. You know, I'll be honest, and Director Chenier and I had many conversations over Florin Road a couple of years ago. I was not necessarily very supportive of it at that time, but here we are 2 years later and the problem continues to exacerbate. And I will also say that the relationship between the city and county and the coordination on homeless issues has never been better and continues to strengthen. And so I would be very, very supportive of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And next I have Director Harris, followed by Director Howe.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You know, I've long been a supporter of organized, safe encampments. I was successful in securing a lot of sanitation trailers for these sites in particular, and we need to use them. We need to get moving on this project as soon as possible. I agree with Director Chenier that the difficulties with Roseville Road are going to take some time to sort through. And I'm definitely supportive of the idea of operating at Franklin sooner. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Harris. Director Howe?
No, I appreciate the comments from both Directors Harris and Chenier. But remembering the conversation from, gosh, I guess it was 2 years ago now, when we talked about this before, there seemed to be a big division between some of the members of the Sac City Council. So I'm just questioning that you guys are all on the same page at this point.
I believe we are.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Most assuredly, Carrie.
If anyone's not, I'll meet you outside after the meeting tonight.
That's why we love RJ.
No,
I support it.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Carrie.
I don't see any other hands up.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add, Steve, if I can, I mean, we would like as many spaces as possible out there. So if we could add into the direction to, you know, direct Henry to work with the city to maximize the space, that would be helpful as well. We don't want to, you know, endanger the security or safety on those issues, but as many places as spaces as we can do would be helpful.
Okay. And if there's any other questions or comments on the general manager's report? I did want to thank Mr. Walter, Ms. Sanchez Ochoa, and Mr. Carter on their excellent annual reports. And with that, seeing no other hands up.
We
Yes, go ahead.
still have the paratransit presentation.
You're right. Let's do it.
All right.
Yes, I believe Adam should be, there we go. Good evening, Chair Miller, directors, and members of the public. Per board member request, we're providing this update on SAC-RT Go paratransit services. In May last year, we did provide a partial update, including the customer survey results. We did not provide a full update at that time due to other activities occurring at the time, including our Elk Grove annexation. Tonight's presentation will focus more on the fiscal health of the program, and going forward, we will report on SAC-RT Go performance as we do with our other key performance indicators in our budget process, and would be glad to respond to any other requests that you might have. Next slide, please. Here, I'd like to briefly review with you the background relevant to the transition to an in-house operation. Our contract with Paratransit Inc. expired in June of 2019, and we continued to have PI operate the service through a continuation clause in our agreement while we attempted to negotiate new terms. Our contract negotiations were not successful, and at the same time, we had a strong labor push to bring the service in-house. In the past, we had been limited by our collective bargaining agreement to either contract with PI or operate the service in-house. After demonstrating the benefits of bringing the service in-house, SAC-RT made the transition to an in-house operation in June of 2020. Next slide, please. Some of the benefits were better pay and benefits for SAC-RT Go employees, which we'll go over in a little more detail later in the presentation. An additional benefit was a CTSA designation for SAC-RT that has provided not only increased revenue, but the ability to continue to coordinate ADA service and non-ADA expanded demand response service. We also offered the eventual transition of a region-wide service for Elk Grove services and coordination with SAC-RT's other service lines. At this point, I'd like to transition over to Brent Berniger, our VP of Finance CFO, for the next few slides.
Thank you, Laura. So I'd like to start off discussing SAC-RT Go's financial performance. All the numbers that I will be discussing tonight are rounded. First, I'd like to start with new revenues. The new revenues totaled $6.5 million and consisted of the following: $870,000 in fares, $3.8 million in Measure A CTSA funds, $1.9 million in LTF Section 4.5 CTSA funds. The remaining other revenues of $7.6 million were from the same sources we used to pay Paratransit in prior years. And finally, we utilized about $4.6 million in CARES Funds Act. Total revenues came up to $18.8 million. Direct costs were $12.3 million. Indirect costs were $3.8 million, arriving at an initial surplus of $2.5 million. The initial surplus that is being shown on this report is done this way so we have an apples to apples comparison with our prior contractor's financial results. Next, after adding the eligibility costs of $800,000, the net SAC-RT financial operating surplus came in around $1.8 million. Next slide, please. Okay, for comparison purposes, we gathered the financial information for fiscal year 2020. As a reminder, this service in fiscal year 2020 was provided by our contractor Paratransit. Since their information is combined, it required us to go to multiple sources, and we've listed those sources. We used their audited financial results, the SACOG allocation reports, their CFO report, and what we agreed upon for an annual reimbursement purposes. And with that, the total operating revenues were $18.1 million. This consisted of fares, Measure A revenues, LTF, operating revenues from the extended contract, and PI's request for about $3 million of CARES funds that SAC-RT agreed to release to PI in exchange for not having to pay the remaining 4 months of contractual payments during fiscal year 2020. The total operating costs were about $19 million. This consisted of both direct and indirect cost. The costs were calculated by using PI's cost per trip multiplied by the actual number of trips taken for the month and year. The results showed a deficit of about $1 million. As discussed in the prior slides, this did not include SAC-RT's cost of about $800,000 for our eligibility and administrative support. If those costs were included, it would make that cost even higher at about $19.9 million. Next slide. On this next slide, we're showing the cost per trip comparison for the month of June. This was both for 2021 as well as 2020. This month was used as opposed to using a full fiscal year because the COVID impact in FY20 was only a few months. That being said, SAC-RT's cost per trip was $97.46 and PI's cost was $122.52. Ridership for SAC-RT was about 17,410, and for Paratransit it was 10,700. Next slide, please. This next slide, what we've done is we're just showing you where we gathered the information for the Paratransit's cost per trip. As you can see, during the COVID breakout, you saw costs range from anywhere from $75.62 in the yellow to $150.97 to $118.81, and then down to the $122.52 that we mentioned earlier in the last slide. Next slide. And so, like Laura had mentioned, we've done a lot of other things at SAC-RT. We've done a lot of employee improvements, and we've listed out what those were. We have a comparison of what some other agencies, nearby transit agencies, have done. They've raised their wages by $2 to $6 per hour, depending on their respective steps. SAC-RT did the same thing in 2020. We implemented similar step increases ranging from 50 cents to $5.49 per hour, depending on seniority. In addition, during October of 2021, we removed the 2 lowest step wages, which resulted in an increase in wages of about 13.5%. And in addition, we lowered our out-of-pocket medical costs and made 401k contributions effective immediately as opposed to waiting. Operators were also eligible for a $2,000 hiring incentive, reimbursement of DMV fees, and opportunities for promotions. Now I'd like to turn it back to Laura to discuss some of the service improvements.
Real quick, Vice Chair Kennedy has his hand up.
Okay.
I can wait till the end, but you know, $98 per trip, lower than what PI was. Okay, that's good. It's still excessively high. I mean, what do we do about that? How do we get? I mean, $98 per trip is ridiculous, and that's my layman's term.
Yeah, I think, you know, some things to consider is when we look at you have direct costs per trip and you have indirect costs, and you want to make sure you look at both of those. I think you definitely want to make sure your direct costs per trip are as low as possible. Indirect costs just takes into account that, you know, all the allocated costs amongst the agency. But the best thing that we can do is raise, you know, the number of people that are taking paratransit rides. We can collect more, you know, fare revenues, collect more revenues to kind of offset some of those costs. We can, it's tough right now because you have rising costs right now. We have, you know, gas and CNG prices going up, and then you also have the labor shortage, which is causing our labor costs to go up. So, you know, we need to provide, I think, although it's maybe higher than what we'd want to pay, I think we also want to make sure that the service that we do is excellent. And I think that's super critical for this group of people to make sure that they have a good team that keeps them safe.
I don't disagree with anything you said, Brett. Thank you. You know, Mr. Chair, I almost think that this is worthy of, I hate to do it again, but a subcommittee of some kind. Because I mean, there's got to be a way that we can come up with providing these services in a safe and reliable and, you know, manner that's not $98 per trip. I know we're government, and therefore we're by definition inefficient. But $98 per trip still just sticks in my craw.
Director Kennedy, I thought of one more maybe response. We have been working on finding ways to bring some outsourcing to that trip where we can actually have other service providers do some of that service. So that is going to be started up by operations. They've done a good job of getting that contract together, and so that should help a little bit with some of these costs as well.
That's very much in the direction that I was going in. Thank you.
Okay.
And don't we have just single riders? In other words, we don't do any ride sharing or carpooling, for lack of a better word. Does that obviously adds to our cost, correct?
Well, I think when we do ride sharing and putting multiple people on one trip, we have that ability. What that can do is that can reduce having multiple trips, right? So that could be another way that helps with this factor.
Okay. And I have Director Howell and then Director Hume with their hands up. Go ahead, Carrie.
Yeah, with regard to the ride sharing thing, is part of that COVID related?
Could be.
Yeah, I would say we have seen that if, you know, there was, in one of these slides, you can kind of go back when COVID hit and the ridership dropped, you know, you started seeing those costs going up. So I think naturally what we saw is in 2020, trips were about 10,400. Now we're about 17,000. So we are seeing a big uptick in, I mean, that's just one fiscal year. You saw about, what is that, 7,000 trips?
No, that's almost doubling. I mean, that is in and of itself is fabulous.
Yep.
But I think that we have to keep in mind that the vast majority of the folks that are using this service are in fact handicapped. And I can't imagine that anybody that falls into that group is not considered to be higher risk. So, if we're able to provide the service for that number of riders at significantly less than paratransit was costing, then that's a good thing. And if it keeps people safe until we, maybe see a light at the end of the tunnel that we thought we were going to see a year ago. But so that was just a comment because of the last question that was raised. But my only other comment would be, or suggestion, do we have any comparative data from any other agencies, in California that are operating some similar services, and how does our cost per ride compare to that?
Yeah, we can pull that data. We've done that. That's a great question. We've done that in the past, and I like that question so much because that's the good way to look at it, because it's an expensive cost per trip when you're only having a few people on a ride, and you're not on a fixed route. So you're going from one area to, an office, and then having to do a lot of deadhead on the way back. And so we can get that data though for you.
Right, and because I agree with Patrick that it does seem like a very, very large number, but if by comparison we find out that we're on the low end of the average, then it almost makes me think, yeah, I agree with you. It's a very, very high number, but far less expensive than an ambulance, which is $2,000 a ride. So if we can compare that to other agencies and hopefully find that we are in the lower end of those averages, I would be a little bit more accepting of it.
Got it. Okay.
Director Hume, then Laura, I think you wanted to chime in.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just preface what I'm about to say by saying, providing mobility to those who rely on it as their only, in some cases, lifeline, and certainly social exposure is the most noble endeavor that we can undertake as far as this director is concerned. Having spent the last few years on the Paratransit Board of Directors, and so I preface that to say, I don't say this in any way to be disparaging or pejorative. This particular demographic of rider, they expect single purpose rides, door-to-door service, not on a shuttle milk run type route where you're trying to be more efficient by capturing more riders. And so it is an exceedingly expensive, far from any chance at cost recovery endeavor. So to the extent that someone believes there's a better mousetrap to be built, all for it. But the contracting out and using taxi vouchers and those types of things, it's not a model that has borne fruit in the past. I'll just say that much.
Thank you, Patrick. Laura, did you want to say anything?
Yes, thank you for just a moment to add to our response. On the presentation, when we were presenting slide 7, I don't know if we can pull that back up. Part of the point we were trying to make there is that we saw a significant increase in the operating costs with the COVID pandemic, the impacts of the pandemic. Paratransit Inc. experienced that, and so did SAC-RT. You'll see beginning there most dramatically in April, the increase in cost. And as we're continuing to experience some of those impacts, we haven't seen the efficiencies we would like at this point. There are basic operating costs that don't change based on the level of service. For example, there's a minimum number of reservationists and dispatchers needed to cover service times. The reservations department's open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 7 days a week and requires minimum staffing levels to ensure that there are always reservationists available to answer calls. The numbers won't fluctuate significantly based on ridership. We have a fleet of 120 vehicles that have to be maintained in service. There's a minimum number of mechanics and service workers required to maintain the fleet. Similarly, there are overhead costs that are not ridership dependent, like recruitment efforts, IT licenses, support from our other departments like legal and police services. So what we wanted to illustrate here is, yes, that cost is high and continues to remain high as we experience those impacts, but we do anticipate it will come down. And there was also a question about ride sharing. Initially, we did try to maintain basically one person per vehicle. As ridership increased, we have implemented some efficiencies to increase the number of passengers per trip. And we've got a slide a little bit further along. We had a couple slides left regarding the ridership as we've seen it trend over time. So that may help answer some of these questions as well. If we can maybe jump ahead to slide 9. Yeah, so since the transition, we have remained committed to customer communication. We actively communicate with our customers through virtual open houses and many other methods. We began holding open houses in December of 2020 and made that practice virtually with 11 total open houses, including 2 that were specific to Elk Grove services. We've made other improvements to service delivery, such as eliminating the mandatory 90-minute wait between trips, implementing a mobile app for ride sharing, and one-seat rides for the residents of Elk Grove. Although we've had some challenges in recent months, as you recall, when we reported to you in May, we had just completed a customer satisfaction survey with high satisfaction ratings in all categories, with 9 out of 10 categories receiving a 94% or better satisfaction rating. One area received an 85% satisfaction rating, which was vehicles arriving on time. So unfortunately, this is the area that's been most impacted by recent pandemic-related staffing shortages. As you heard earlier, COVID-19 cases reaching record highs and national workforce shortage is having a tremendous impact on our GO operations and staffing overall. On SAC-RT GO, this is primarily impacting on-time performance. We are delivering our scheduled trips, but acknowledge that we are leaving passengers waiting longer until we get this resolved. We do recognize the impact this has on our customers. In addition to aggressively recruiting for additional staff, we have also recently issued a notice of intent to award to a vendor for supplemental services, as was mentioned earlier. It's not taxis, but it's similar, an alternate service provider to support us. ATU is also collaborating with us on creative solutions, such as expanding our use of operators across service lines. This is another benefit of having the service in-house, with potential to tap into our drivers across the service lines. And then we can go to the last slide with ridership. So this slide illustrates the ridership trends over the past 2.5 years. We've provided close to 35,000 trips a month pre-pandemic with our contracted provider. There was a sharp drop in March of 2020 before the transition to in-house operation, and we're seeing a gradual return of ridership. At the end of 2021, we were at 63% of pre-pandemic ridership. I should note that we have seen a sharp drop in ridership just over the last few days. So at this point, we'd be ready to answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from directors?
Hang on. There we go.
Oh, very good. Vice Chair Kennedy.
I think, Patrick Kennedy's hands up.
Thank you, Chair. I guess this is directed toward Director Hume. I appreciate your comments, and we all agree that this is an incredibly valuable service, something that we as public entity should be providing. But Director Hume, with your experience with this issue, probably more than anybody on this Zoom, $98, does that seem reasonable to you?
No, it's far from reasonable. And in fact, if the slide that Laura brought back up, you see, it should hover in the, it used to hover in the $50 to $60 range per ride. And so you've seen a dramatic increase, partly due to COVID inefficiencies and all of the things that the world is going through right now.
I understand we're in a different world now, but I guess I'd like to give direction to staff from this one board member that, we need to find ways to get it. I mean, $98 per trip is just, as far as I'm concerned, not acceptable. And we need to find ways to provide this service. I agree that we need to provide this service. And I agree that we're doing a good job of providing this service, but we have to find ways of bringing that cost down. And that's my only comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other questions or comments? Thank you for the report, Ms. Ham and Mr. Benninger. I can never say your last name, Brent. We'll just leave it at that.
It's okay.
And with that, let's move on to the next item, please.
The next item is reports, ideas, and questions from directors, if any.
I'm not seeing any hands up.
I don't see any.
And do we have any further business, Madam Chair?
That is it.
Well, then we are adjourned.
Good night, all.
Good night.
you,
Have a
everyone.
nice evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank you.